This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. Boring. Boring.
You gotta work. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. That's exactly what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're gonna feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome to Lembit Öpik, live here on Unprecedented TV, where we find the facts, kill the spin, tell it like it is, all over the world. And big thank you to all of you who've subscribed since the last time. Please do subscribe. Go to YouTube, Unprecedented TV. It won't cost you anything. And it helps us. You get notifications and we get the numbers. It's a symbiotic relationship, which is in defense of free speech. Well, I'm also pleased to say there's some great shows coming up this week, every week, in fact. And you can find the archive, hundreds of programs there already. Soon it will be thousands. And top insider trading here. We might be getting a set of feature films as well. That's for our art and culture section as well. We've got some big meetings coming up on that. If you're watching this in the archive, maybe you've seen, we already have those films there, and films you're unlikely to see anywhere else on the mainstream. So thank you very much. It's all thanks to you and you watching these shows that this is happening. Now then, over recent days and weeks, the question of political correctness has relentlessly reared its ugly head. Sarah Pochin, who is a by-election winner for Reform UK, got herself into hot water by saying there were too many black and Asian faces on the news, on television adverts, and that made the news. A lot of people complaining, oh, it's terrible, she's racist, and rather strangely, then she apologized. I want to talk about that with my guest. Should she have done so? A few facts for you. 82% of the UK population identifies as white. 51% of faces in adverts are black or Asian. There's an interesting debate to be had there. Is it possible to have that debate these days? Or does Sarah Pochin's experience indicate that you are just branded racist if you say anything about the ethnicity of people in, for example, adverts? And you could say the same about TV shows. Sadiq Khan, the, in my view, underperforming mayor of London, infamously said that white families don't really look representative of London. Why can he say that? But Sarah Pochin can't talk about the adverts. All of these are conundrums which need to be resolved, but nobody's resolving them. Perhaps my guest, who's never knowingly undersold with his insights, can help. It's none other than Nick Buckley MBE. That's a very English label, MBE. Aren't you ashamed?
No, not at all. Not at all. And thank you for the invite again for this wonderful show, this fantastic new channel. I'm having a great morning. I hope you're having a great morning. Last time I came on, you said, Matt, you said that my introduction was a little bit flat. So I'm hoping that was a bit more energy in the show today.
I was wondering why you were saying that. This is uncharacteristically warm. No one's nice to me. Not anymore. I find it more unsettling that you're positive than that you're your normal surly self, some would say. But no, right back at you. It's great to have you here. Just tell us again, what does MBE stand for?
Member of the British Empire.
And what does that mean? I don't know, what can you do with that?
Absolutely nothing. It was a nice award to be given by the country for the charity work I'd done over several decades. So it means a lot to me, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not much in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I think you're very modest, actually. I think if I've met anyone who deserves this MBE thing, it's you. I thought maybe it meant you were able to drive your herd of sheep across London Bridge or something. I think there's something which allows you to do that. A freeman of the city or something like that. Now then, the discussion I want to have with you is really directly about free speech, which is the raison d'etre of Unprecedented. Sarah Pochin, who I don't really know personally. I've had a very limited interaction with her, but she got into hot water because apparently she said something about there being too many black and Asian faces on the bus. And this was massive hoo-ha, huge upheaval in the media, with somebody like Wes Streeting, who always seems to be very sanctimonious in my view, clearly pitching to try to be a replacement for Keir Starmer, at least in my view. It seemed to me that they all decided to go crazy. There he is. Reform MP's comments about adverts racist, says Wes Streeting. And he's got this earnest face, super serious. Some would say supercilious. Let's start at the beginning. What do you make of what Sarah Pochin said?
Well, what she said was factually correct. You know, all the stats show us it's factually correct. All she's doing is verbalizing what we've all noticed over the last 5, 6, 7 years is, oh, there's a white person on TV. What channel is it? Because we don't often see this on this channel. And if it's not a white person, it's a mixed race family. And it's like, but it's that obvious now that we're talking about it. Her mistake was this. She either should have mentioned it and leaned into it and really went for it and not apologized for it, or she should have kept her mouth shut. What she did was the worst in both worlds. She took the middle option. I'm going to mention it a little bit, then I'm going to lose my backbone. I'm going to apologize, and I'm going to make a problem for me and my party. That was the worst scenario. She should have lent into it and went, I'm not apologizing. In fact, I'm going to say these things now as well, and went after it even more. Reform need to do what Trump did, which is basically attack the press, attack the Overton window and say, we don't care what you think. You may call yourself the mainstream media, but you're nothing now. You're nothing to me. You're nothing to the public. We don't trust you. We've got much better channels now. And one of them is called Unprecedented TV.
No, thank you. I'm hoping to get Sarah Pochin on the station pretty soon, actually, so that she can account for herself. It'll be interesting to see how she handles that very, very interesting point you're making, that she, in your view, needlessly apologized. She should have explained her position. Let me just frame this as I see it. I got involved in politics because of freedom. I was, in fact, called the president of free speech by a newspaper when I was president of the Students' Union at Bristol University. And I've always felt this is an area where governments do have quite a lot of power. My worry is that if you have to apologize every time you say something controversial, then you're actually self-censoring. You're more or less saying, oh, well, my critics were correct. And that bothers me greatly because I very rarely take any action against anyone, for example, on social networks, where they use the strongest language, most offensive language, because I understand that's the nature of the beast. That's the free speech forum. So, Nick, when you see Sarah Pochin apologizing, I worry that it actually does make things worse. It's an implication of guilt.
Oh, absolutely. And it's worse than that. It's also now a subconscious message to everybody else. This is another thing we're not allowed to talk about because she tried to talk about it and look what happened to her. So therefore, I'm not going to talk about it. She's made the whole situation worse. And the reason why she's made it worse is one of the flaws of Reform, and they've got many flaws, but one of the flaws of Reform UK is this. Nigel Farage has been heavily damaged psychologically over many decades by constantly being called racist and a Nazi. And subconsciously, he's always trying to prove that he's not. And he isn't, by the way. Nowhere near is he any of those things. But he's been called that by the left for since he got into politics. And he'll do anything. He'll say anything to a certain extent to show people that he's not a racist, he's not a Nazi. And I think Sarah was told to apologize because we need this to go away. Well, what he needs to do and what Reform need to do is embrace this. They need to embrace these, I call them, hurty words, because they're not going anywhere. If you think this is bad now, with what they're calling Reform and the attack on free speech, you're going to have to wait for the next couple of years. It's going to intensify. The left have got a strategy now, and I'll get into that in a minute.
Right. That's interesting. So what you're saying is Nigel, well, we don't know this for sure, but Nigel Farage may have been responsible for saying we need to get away from this, that we need to not cause problems for the party. Well, there he is, in fact, with Sarah. I think that was taken when Sarah won the remarkable victory in Runcorn by-election, where Labour just lost, basically.
Yeah. She won by 6 votes.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's 3 times the majority my old friend Mark Oaten had in 1997. He won by 2.
Wow.
Yeah, and a defeated Conservative candidate called Malone managed to convince the Electoral Commission or whoever that due to questionable voting, some people said they'd made mistakes, that they should rerun the by-election, rerun the election as by-election, and they succeeded. They made that happen. Mark won again, but his majority went up from 2 to 21,553. people don't really like bad losers, I think, in politics. And Mark actually does something for us on Unprecedented TV. It's called Lib and Let Die. He pretends to be a Liberal Democrat, but I'm not so sure. Mark, if you're watching, you can have your right to reply to the next program. Returning to the situation then, just so that we kind of finish this one off, we don't really know exactly what caused Sarah Pochin to have to apologise, but you suspect that it might be pressure from the mainstream, pressure to conform, pressure to give in to something which isn't even entirely logical, making a statement. I don't think it's logical to say that making a statement about skin colour of people in adverts is a racist comment. I don't think that follows logically.
No, it doesn't. I mean, let me tell you this. I think it's Nigeria. Nigeria have banned every single advertisement in the country that features white people. So now
you back that up?
No, pardon?
You can back that up, can you?
Yeah. It was in the news. It was in the mainstream news last year. They're sick of multinational companies like Coca-Cola using their Western adverts in Nigeria. So to go on Nigerian TV with advertisements, you only can be black. And I get that, because using foreign people with foreign cultures, like American adverts, into a different country, that damages your culture because you start infesting with other people's ideas and the way it looks. So there's one thing. The mainstream media didn't think it was racist when Hamza Useless was in the Scottish Parliament going, they're white and he's white and that's white and she's white. And no one thought any of that was racist. But if you've got someone who just happens to point out what's factually true, what they've witnessed with their eyes, which we've all been talking about, these are memes on the internet, the fact that there's so many black people in British adverts, but she can't mention that. And she can mention it, and they were just looking for any opportunity. This is what's going to happen over the next couple of years until the next general election. Starmer and the Labour Party have realised we're going to probably lose the next election unless this happens, which is the left have to coalesce around one leader. So the Greens, your party, and the Lib Dems have to coalesce around Labour, because it's only Labour that are going to keep the Nazis out of power. And they're saying those Nazis are called Reform UK, which is a slur, which is absolutely not true. But they've started this now. They've started it at their conference, where all they talked about was how evil Reform are and Nigel's a racist. They've got 2-3 years now to set the agenda that at the next election, it isn't left or right. It's not Tories v Labour. It's nothing. What it's going to be is this. It's going to be Labour or the Nazis. And that's the only way they think they can retain government, and they're going to go hell for leather for this. So watch the slurs, watch the constant attacks on Farage and Reform, and it's all going to be racist, Nazi.
Yeah, it's a shame. I know Nigel very well, and it's preposterous, absolutely preposterous to suggest that he's racist. It's just ridiculous. I don't know Pochin so well, Sarah Pochin, but it seems unlikely that she's racist. I just don't believe that she is, actually. Racism is a kind of a bit of an old-fashioned concept, I think, really. how many people really genuinely think that somebody from another country is necessarily inferior? Maybe I'm just being naive, Nick, but I don't think many people in Parliament think like that. Just in terms of people like Sarah Pochin, she says some pretty controversial things sometimes, and she's got the right, in my view. I don't think there's any reason why she should be prevented from speaking and sharing her views. These are issues which Sarah chooses to raise. I remember, honestly, whenever I was an MP, I never had an issue people coming in with controversial points. I suggested that we negotiate with the IRA. And David Blunkett, who was then Home Secretary, said, "No, I'm not getting into that whatsoever." He was utterly outraged, unwilling to accept the reality that free speech involves saying uncomfortable things. What do you think?
I agree. One of the big problems is, pardon me, is depending who you talk to, depends on the definition of the word racist. Because the word racist now means 1,000,004 different things to 1,000,004 different people. So the whole idea of racism, 50 years ago when we were growing up, would be discriminating against somebody because of the color of their skin. It had nothing to do with, I think we're better than them. It was nothing to do with that. That's some type of supremacy. But it was about discriminating against somebody because of their color of their skin. It doesn't even mean that anymore now. It means having social power. It means being a minority. To have free speech, you have to risk offending people, because there'll be things I'm saying now that people won't like, but it's the only way I get to express my views. And I don't try to offend people on purpose, but I'm positive I offend loads of people with my views and my opinions, but I don't do it to offend them. I do it because they're my views and opinions. And it's not my problem if you're offended by what I say. That's your problem, not my problem. All I need to do is have those opinions and back them up.
I've always said that. I've said offense can't be given, it can only be taken. You can choose to be offended by what I say, but you have to make that choice. Some of the stuff that I put up with on, I have to admit, a very active X feed. Follow me on X if you want to, by the way. It's you'll find me at Lembit Öpik, hard to miss. But it's so unremittingly rude. Well, maybe it's because I'm 60. It doesn't bother me so much because I accept that is the rough and tumble of that rather abrasive environment. But now, what do we call them? Snowflakes. Snowflakes take offense about everything. And that really worries me. I think we're making the world worse by doing this. There's a line from a song by a progressive rock band. Do you remember progressive rock, prog rock? You're old enough to remember that? Okay. Now I make myself seem even older. But it's a line. Soft Machine, great band. They say it begins with a blessing and ends with a curse, making life easy by making it worse. And I think that's what we're doing. So, well, you might be offended by that, so we better ban it. And now Sarah Pochin, she said something which is factually correct, that there is a disproportionately large number of visibly ethnic people in adverts. She didn't say it was immoral. She just said she didn't like it. She's accused of being racist. And I find that really difficult because you should be, even if you disagree with it, you should be able to have a grown-up debate.
I don't think they were offended by it. They just use it as an excuse to attack her and attack reform. A couple of years ago, if she'd have said that, they probably would have said, yes, you're right, Sarah, and isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful that over 50% of the people on adverts now are black or brown and everything? Isn't that wonderful? We're getting to utopia. That's what they would have said a couple of years ago. But today, they're an attack dog now against reform because they're scared of reform. So no one is upset about this because it's factually correct. It's just an excuse to attack reform. And like I said, we're going to see so much more of this.
Yeah. Okay. We'll come back to you in a minute. I want to actually look at some adverts and see if they would be acceptable in the present day. I'm going to use Jaguar Land Rover as a case study, by the way. Now, you're watching me, Lembit Öpik, here on Unprecedented TV with Nick Buckley MBE, as we ask whether Sarah Pochin was entitled to make the comments she made. Whether you agree with them or not, that's not what we're debating. were debating whether she had the right to say it without having to retract, and without the story becoming a major debate about whether she's racist or not. Another show which you've got to watch is Tim Scott Uncancelled. He's the head of the Freedom Association. Fantastic guy. He finds the stories that you may not see anywhere else. Great show, great guy, and great views as well. And the same can be said of my guest today. That's Nick Buckley MBE. The story so far, then, we've been talking about the rather po-faced response to what Sarah Pochin, a Reform UK MP, said about adverts. And I'm arguing that should be entitled to make those kinds of points. But people like Wes Streeting, who's quite obviously trying to set himself up as a potential candidate for a replacement of Keir Starmer. I think everybody knows Keir Starmer's dead in the water in terms of his future. It's just a question of how long he's going to carry on drifting. And this man here, Wes Streeting, who I used to quite like, but I've now gone off a bit because he's so absolutely wokest in his position. People like him criticizing the position of, well, not just Sarah Pochin, but a lot of times people who he thinks don't conform to the wokerati. Nick, you're going to say something? Sorry.
No, I was half coughing. Sorry.
He makes you feel a bit sick.
Well, yeah. You have to open my mouth a little bit. No,
that's very harsh. I didn't think you'd go quite that far. Okay, that was the inference. I accepted. I caused that. Go on.
He's changed his strategy because, up to recently, his strategy was we need to win the middle ground. So I'm going to come across as middle ground. I'm going to be sensible. I'm going to be there. But now they've all realized they've lost the middle ground. The only way they go to power now is with the far left, the real socialists. So therefore, he's having to change his tune now because it's the only way he thinks he gets to win.
Well, do you think he's planning to make a leadership bid, or am I just imagining that?
I think they all are. It's a shorter list to look at the front bench and point to the ones who aren't planning a leadership bid.
My money's on David Lammy. I want him to be the Prime Minister. I really do.
That'd be great for me and you. We'd have a lot to talk about, but I need to put my country first and say not Lammy. I think at the moment, if there was an election today, internal election for PM in the Labour Party, I think it probably would go to Lucy Powell.
Not necessarily. That's a different subject, but an insider told me that Ed Miliband is the private favourite.
Yes, yeah.
Look, I can literally do that job. That would mean instead of being leader of the opposition, which he has done before, he'd actually be the Prime Minister. Yeah. Wow, that would be a sight to behold. I'm actually more concerned about Ed Miliband than about David Lammy, because Lammy lacks intellectual ability, and he would be incompetent and probably impotent in the job. Ed Miliband might do some really significant damage, hundreds of billions of pounds worth of damage to our economy. But that's another story. Let's get back to advertising. Do you remember the E-Type Jag?
Yeah.
The E-Type Jag. Yeah, it was, in my view, one of the most beautiful cars ever made. Well, they had certain promotions for it. There's an E-Type Jag. What a beautiful looking car, in my view. And this is a promotion advert, which they have. A couple of things to watch in this. One is, look at that car. Look at that engine. 12 cylinders. Now, this is on a road. Look at the speedometer as the car starts driving. They don't seem to be quite as worried about promoting 20s plenty as the current bunch of politicians. But now this is a man driving a car. Probably they knew he's the kind of guy who's likely to relate to the kind of person who'd buy the E-Type Jag. I'm sure some women bought E-Type. Look at the speed. Yeah, they saw it. Well over 100 miles per hour there. And it looks it's about 150 miles per hour on the road. Now, I don't know. I think this is from around 1961, something like that. And there's a raw masculinity to it. That was the whole thing about the E-type Jag, I suppose. There you are. Lots of machismo there. Do you think that was wrong?
Absolutely not. It sold, didn't it? You know, it sold for decades after decades after decades. We tend, I mean, look at the latest Jag advertisement that almost bankrupted the company and cost the chief executive's job. The car itself is, I like the new Jag. I think it's lovely. I even like the pink version. I think that looks fantastic. I hated the advertisement with all the queer folk, the narcissists, the lunatics all marching and we're different, we're queer, the new Jag's a queer car. And the wonder why it didn't sell. Let me tell you.
I just didn't understand what the messaging was. I think you mean this advert.
Yeah.
This one. Yeah.
Does that make you want to go out and buy a Jag?
If somebody didn't tell you it was about a Jaguar, you wouldn't have any idea.
No.
I don't know. You can't say that they're necessarily gay. You're making an assumption.
No, I didn't say the word gay. I said the word queer.
Oh, in the literal sense. Okay, fair enough. Now, I don't think that makes me want to buy a Jaguar.
No.
I would have bought the E-Type. If I didn't know anything about cars, I wouldn't buy a Jaguar based on that. That's the advert that you meant, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost killed the brand. But what happened there was, I would imagine 5 years ago, they've come up with an idea. We're building a new car. They got woke agencies involved. And these things take a long time to go from design to production, a new car like a Jag. And their advertisement plan started at peak woke, and they thought this is going to do good. But 3 years later, when they launch it, it's like, oh, we're post-peak woke now. We all think this is crap. Now, an old-fashioned Jag advertisement would be a half-naked woman lying on the bonnet of a Jag. And we'd look at that and we'd go, God, she's attractive. I'd like her. Oh, she's lying on a Jag. If I buy a Jag, does that mean I might get a girlfriend like her? And that's a subconscious message. We look at the new advertisement and we go, oh, look at those freaks. If I buy a Jag, do I turn into a freak? And it's the wrong subliminal message they're sending.
You're not very PC yourself, I have to say. I used to be in advertising, and the truth is that neither of those, neither the first version for the E-Type or the second version for whatever Jag they're selling there is particularly subtle. The first one didn't have ladies draped on the bonnets. I was working in the motorcycle industry for a long time, and I noticed that the kind of ladies you're talking about were quite prevalent at the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham about 25 years ago, but that's pretty much gone now. They don't really do that, either because of complaints or they think that it's not acceptable in the woke world. But for Jaguar to go that, and I understand that, there may be people who just think that it's inappropriate to sell with sex in that sense, maybe. But the reality is that the Jaguar one does exactly the same thing by trying to appeal to some niche market who dresses like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. As you say, what's happened there is a niche within a niche, because advertising is niche in itself, has come up with something which just is so detached from what the ordinary person thinks. Even if you aren't straight, you don't necessarily find those kinds of messages comfortable. I do a regular podcast with a gay man. I'll ask him about it, but I don't think there's anything in that advert he would relate to.
No, and it's got nothing to do with homosexuality. It's to do with queer, and it's to do with woke. How many big brands have we seen recently, or last 3, 4, 5 years, damage themselves because they went woke? They were a great company selling lots of stuff, and suddenly they want to mess around with this new fad, and it either kills them or it damages the brand. We're seeing it all the time, and the chief execs always get fired.
Yeah, it's a shame. And then they have to apologize, and you get all of this Pochin type retraction where, oh, well, we didn't mean to cause offense. We hadn't considered it. No one's really apologized for the Jaguar advert. It's not immoral. It's just stupid.
It's just stupid, yeah.
But then you could argue the same about a lot of the advertising out there now. I've got really put off by some of the Christmas ads where they've decided not to give a nice, simple Christmas story. They've insisted on putting some kind of a woke messaging in it. And I won't actually buy things for Christmas from those companies that do that because I dislike it. I put it this way. I've got young kids. I don't want them to be watching things like this that cause them to try to have to process something that they're not familiar with.
Yeah, I got to a stage now where there's companies I don't use anymore now. And the latest one was, what was it? Oh, I can't. Anyway, I went in the shop and they had a big pride flag. And I went up, turned around, walked out. My wife wasn't happy. She wanted something from the shop. I said, no, we don't shop here anymore. Same with advertisements. I look at advertisements now and I go, you're just winding me up now. I ain't shopping there. I'm not buying that. One last year was Dove soap. I've been buying Dove soap for decades. It's really good for my skin. I don't buy Dove soap anymore now because they went woke and they annoyed me. The only way we change some of these companies is by affecting their bottom line, and people need to boycott the companies that annoy them. And I do the same with movies. And the amount of movies I start, and within 10 minutes, I'm turning it off because I'm going, that's annoying me, because a 4'3" little woman can't beat up 94 big men because she's a police officer. So I just see stupid stuff all the time, and I just turn it off.
It's a disappointment because a lot of people will agree with what you say, but they're frightened to say it because they're frightened of being accused of being a bigot. I've found this incredibly ironic myself, where anybody who knows my history will know that it would basically be very difficult for me to be, for example, anti-migrant, considering my parents were. The issue is, once again, not even subtle. My parents embraced the culture that embraced them. That's really what we're expecting. Any country can reasonably expect that. But instead, you're turned into some kind of a racist if you have issues about the lack of integration and all these things. I think the same goes for advertising, that if you don't like the advertising, you should be forced to like it. If you don't like the advertising, that's bad on you. No, advertising is not a social service. Advertising is a marketing ploy. And I think it's entirely legitimate for a politician to express a personal view that she doesn't like the appearance of advertising. That's as simple as that. I don't see why that has become such a big political issue. Go on, Nick.
I was going to say, again, it isn't a big issue. This is an excuse to attack Reform UK. That's all this is. I don't think Labour Party care about this. They know it's factual. They've heard it all. We've been talking about this for years. This isn't a shock, but it's any excuse to attack Reform UK and brand them as racist, Nazis, and Hitler. And like I said, we're going to see so much more of this.
That's quite disappointing. I don't know if you remember this advert, but I know you'll know as soon as I play it. You'll remember the final line in it. You probably will remember. I think this is based on you. You know what this is?
Yeah, milk tray.
Yeah. The last line is,
all because the lady loves milk tray.
Would you be allowed to do this now? There he goes. He's fought a shark. He leaves the milk tray.
This would be wrong on so many levels. First of all, this man's a stalker. He's stalking this woman. He breaks into her boat. She's probably used that boat to flee from him because of domestic violence and domestic abuse.
Bit much. Are you creating some kind of a rather remarkable story there? And
now he's given her chocolate because that's all about control. He's called a feeder. He's trying to get her fat so nobody else wants her. He's feeding her. He's trying to control her. He's leaving little clues. So she knows he's been. She'll report it to the police. They'll go, what do you mean he broke into your boat? He's trying to make it, turning him mental. This now would be deemed as some patriarchic, toxic masculinity stalker. You'd never get away with that today.
It's interesting, a subtle point. but he arrives. He's had a tussle with a shark with his bare hands. On the way back, when he jumps off the boat, he's got a knife in his mouth. So presumably the RSPCA will be going mental as well because of the inference there.
Exactly. The environmental lobby. Here he is now, attacking nature, attacking a shark. And look, he's got a knife. It's not just young black men who have knives. He's a white man and he's got a knife as well. Oh, they'll have a field day with this one.
Well, this whole program served to depress me even more than I was before. And then, at the back of my mind, I think, is there anything we said in this show that's going to get us into trouble? This is the problem. We're in a situation now where reason and logic and tolerance, this is the irony, tolerance has gone out the window. We keep being told, you've got to be tolerant and you've got to be diverse. They're not. If you're not tolerant the way that you're instructed to be tolerant, like the Jaguar advert, then you're in trouble.
This is all about control. It's always been about control and propaganda. So they use our traits, British English traits against us, our tolerance. So they use that against us. You need to be tolerant of the things you don't want. Well, I don't want them, but you've got to be tolerant of them. Compassion is another one. Oh, you've got to do this. It's compassionate to accept these people, to accept this ideology, to accept these things that are breaking and damaging the country. It's compassionate. I don't want to. I don't know, but you've got to be compassionate. They keep using our good traits against us, and we keep allowing them. As a nation, we need to become more intolerant. We need to become intolerant of people who are intolerant of us. That's what we need to do.
It's not just the United Kingdom, though.
No, it's the West.
I'm thinking of another example of an ongoing thing. Emmanuel Macron, president of France, and his wife, Mrs. Macron, they seem to be involved in this never-ending dispute about whether she's a man or not. I don't really care. I literally don't care. It makes no difference to me. But the fact that they seem to want to have legal cases against somebody called Candice Owens in America. I don't get why that it matters, but it seems to fuel this whole same thing. That doesn't make, even if I was French, I wouldn't care. But they seem to make it important. And I just think that's all part of the same problem. Why would I'm not interested in your sexuality. I'm not interested in the sexuality of anybody really that I'm not intimately involved with. So what's gone wrong? We're nearly out of time, but if you wanted to give a theory for what's gone wrong, you've explained why you think Labour's doing it here, but why in France is this so important? Why does Mrs. Macron spend so much time trying to sue people who say she's a man? Why does it matter?
Two things. The first thing is, I think the Macrons are embracing this and suing people and not letting it die is because it takes column inches away from their poor performance running France. So it's a freak show on the side that takes up a lot of airtime. They'll take that rather than all the criticism of his government and his policies and the collapse of France, which could happen economically. So they'll take that. That's a win-win for them. Why is this important? Well, I agree with you. I don't care. But there is a serious point to this. If it turns out that she is a man, we've already discussed previously that the age gap in this relationship when he was 15 is troublesome. But if it turns out she is a man, it turns out she is her brother, and he transitioned. If that turns out to be true, then that just goes to prove the lies the establishment can get away with. If they can lie about this, lie about who he's married to and his partner, and she's not a woman, she's a man, then it will just go to prove what else are they lying about. So part of it, I can see public interest in that, but also they're using it not so they won't look at his record as leader of France.
I have to say, my personal opinion is that, and as much as it matters, it's unlikely. But as I said,
I have no
before,
idea.
It just doesn't make any difference to me at all. What makes a difference to me is the distraction. If somebody told me Nick Buckley is a woman, I would say, so what?
But if I'd spent decades telling everybody I'm not a woman, I'm not a woman, I'm a biological man, I'm a biological man, and then it turns out I am a woman. Well, that just goes to prove that I've been lying for decades and decades and decades. And if you can lie about that and treat the public with such disdain, then the public need to know about this. If the answer would have been, is she a woman, is she a man, and the French president did what our whole family does, which is we don't comment on silliness. We don't comment on silliness. Well, I could accept that. But once you start lying to the public, if you are lying to the public, there's public interest there then.
Yeah, I think I've got a more benign attitude towards it, and it's simply because for some reason, this is this huge story. Perhaps it's distraction behavior, you're right, maybe. But for some reason, they seem to really care about it. And then that makes people interested. That's the thing. But fundamentally, I don't care, and I don't feel strong. And if it turned out that you were, in fact, a woman, I'd probably ask you off air why you hadn't told people. I remember quite famously when Nigel, this is quite relevant to what we're talking about wokeism and so on, when Nigel Evans, the former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, came out. I remember what had happened. I was listening to the radio at midnight, Magic FM it was actually. I remember this really clearly. And it said something like, record snowstorms across Europe. And Nigel Evans, the Tory MP, reveals he's gay. So I contacted him and said, "What made you come out now?" And I said, "Does the Prime Minister know?" He said, "Well, if he doesn't, he's the only person in Parliament, you know." And it didn't matter. And the media tried to make a big thing of it. But Nigel just said, "Yeah, okay, so what?" And it disappeared. For them. Afterwards, something very bad happened, which actually involved Keir Starmer, which I'll go into some other time. But it's one reason I dislike Keir Starmer so much. Let's summarize then, because all of this is related. In my world, Nick, and I'll ask you to answer the same question I'm answering for myself now. In my world, I'm not interested in people's sexual orientation. I'm perfectly willing to have a debate about ethnicity and advertising, because as a marketeer, I'm interested in it from what works. If having 51% of your faces as non-white works to sell your product, go ahead and do it, because all that advertising is there to do is to sell stuff. It's not to sell a narrative, a concept, or a philosophy. It's to sell stuff. That's what you do. Hopefully you do it without breaking the law, without offending people, but it's to sell stuff. So if the marketeers could show me that the ethnic spread that they have in the adverts works best, then I would accept that. But we're not even allowed to have the debate. So my issue isn't what they do in the advertising. It's what they prevent us saying about it. What about you?
I completely agree. Advertisements are there to sell a product or a service. And if those advertisements work, well, they should use what works to sell their product. It's all about selling products. If you don't like those advertisements, then don't buy those products. And those companies will get the message if there's enough people who don't like those advertisements. That should be left to the commercial managers of those companies. We shouldn't interfere in it, apart from not liking them and not buying those products. When it comes to politicians and other people's sexuality, none of our business, really, unless they lie. Unless they lie about their sexuality, then it's none of our business.
I don't mind if people do lie about their sexuality. They could be embarrassed. They could be worried about what other people say. Well, I don't like those hypocrisy. If somebody doesn't want to share their sexuality, I'm fine with that. But it's the hypocrisy that I don't like. And that's a whole new subject. But essentially, Macron can do what they want. People can be gay or straight or transsexual, whatever it is, as long as they're not inconsistent. And I think the greatest and most tragic irony of the entire woke agenda is the inconsistency. We believe in free speech as long as it's just saying what we agree. And if you say something that we disagree with, then you have to apologize. And the worst thing about that is when people start apologizing and they shouldn't, because as you say, it just makes things worse.
Yeah, when I got cancelled for criticizing Black Lives Matter, I never apologized. I doubled down. I never apologized. Cost me everything. but I didn't apologise. I was asked many times to apologise. I'd have kept my job, I'd have kept everything, and I said no, I'm not apologising because I don't mean it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I'm glad to have you here on Unprecedented TV, a place which hopefully is respectful. If you have a completely opposite view to what you've had, then let us know. Love to have you on the show. We really do talk to everybody, from the hard left, the hard right, whatever that means, from all aspects of what's called the Overton window. That's the window of ideas which is considered acceptable, but also will go outside it as much as the law allows. A big thank you to Nick Buckley MBE. There you have your say as well. Love to have a chat with you on X, and do please subscribe on Unprecedented TV. That's at YouTube. Doesn't cost you anything, and the numbers really help us a lot. I'm Lembit Öpik. That was Lembit Öpik Live here on Unprecedented. See you soon.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages.